The next one is the water supply improvement update and summer conservation.
Helen's on her way.
She's on her way, and we haven't got Development Christchurch here yet. So, well, we've got morning tea arriving at 11. So, why don't we just adjourn the meeting until 11 o'clock, and people can bring a cuppa back with them. Yep. Okay. Helen, all is forgiven.
I thought I was going to be free to get my coffee, but no.
Right. Helen, would you like to introduce the report?
I shall. Right. So this is an update report on the water supply improvement program, and as you all know, this is about ensuring our water supply is both safe and good to drink. So you'll have a couple of appendices to the report this month which are new, and they show, as we're working through the 53 pump stations, how we're reducing the chlorine dose and or removing the chlorine from those pump stations as the wellheads are upgraded. And then the second chart that shows the number of wells that have been signed off as we progress through that major remediation program. And you may have seen on the news last night that the news crews were out at the Grampian site where there's an above-ground wellhead installation being put in as they were there. So it was good to see the real progress. In terms of the alternative disinfection, the design at main pumps has been completed. We're just checking that in-house with our asset management and operations people, and that'll go out to tender next week. We've also confirmed the approach for the repairs to below ground wells, and we're seeking secure status for some 46 below ground wells where we have positive artesian pressure. So we have mapped out an approach there which means checking the integrity of the well casing, sealing the below ground chambers, putting in backflow and air vents as we would normally, putting in sump pumps and wet floor detectors just in case some water does get into those chambers, and having some automatic shut-offs. And with the addition of more frequent inspections and sanitation of those chambers and a site-specific water safety plan, the drinking water assessor has indicated that she will sign those off as meeting the current standards. So I hope to be able to update you on the progress of that. We're just getting that work costed at the moment, so we'll be able to update you on that within a month or so. You will note that we've started to talk about water conservation over the summer period, and that's to enable us to keep working on both the major remediation to bring wellheads above ground and on the works on those below ground wellhead chambers. And our own parks and gardens people will be participating in that conservation campaign, and the indications from the survey work that we've done is that residents will also contribute to that campaign and save water. And finally, the report just gives an update on the broader strategic framework for potable water and some of the strategic documents that are either being drafted or almost ready to come to council for confirmation. Happy to take questions.
Aaron, Pauline.
My first one is 2C on our thing up there. It says when you're monitoring the consumption, that we would bring in the restrictions of handheld hoses between 9 PM and 7 AM on alternate days. Is that back to front? Shouldn't it be 9 AM till 7?
No, we want people to water overnight, essentially. So after 9 o'clock at night and before 7 in the morning. Watering during the day is when we have the problems.
Yeah, so because that's not very clear. So it's on alternate days you're allowed to water with a handheld hose at midnight.
Indeed, yes.
Right. Which is
9 p.m. or 6 a.m.
Yeah, so overnight, 7 a.m. But
at any time. You don't have to do it all
so
night.
on the other day, you're allowed to run your sprinkler full bore.
On the other day, you're not allowed to run your sprinkler at all.
You're not allowed to use
The restriction
it at all.
it means no sprinklers.
The restriction means no sprinklers whatsoever.
Yeah, the
Okay.
level 3 restriction is no sprinklers whatsoever.
Okay, and because we've had a problem in the past that people have often seen this as quite onerous, and then of course there's the attacks on, well, you're letting other people take water, so on and so forth, as you've probably heard them. How we need to make this really clear, the how and why, so people don't get confused, because even I was confused then, and I think I'm averagely smart.
Yes, so this is a very short form of the restrictions just for the purposes of the council resolution. There will be a much broader marketing campaign and communications campaign that sets this out very clearly alongside the water saving tips.
But the key about this is inviting the public to come on board with a water conservation campaign.
That's
so
exactly right.
if the public come on board and want this to happen and want us to continue to working as hard as we possibly can over the summer, then they'll come on board.
Yeah.
You know, and if they don't come on board, then staff will. Well, I'm just wondering whether you should come back to us and ask for permission to introduce level 3 water restrictions.
One of the challenges with that is that we'll have contractors on site and works underway, and if we can't make a quick decision, we'll actually have to stop the works to keep up with the demand
So
in the network.
my point being is that and it's the Mayor's point, is that for this to work, the public have to be on board and have to completely understand the reason for this. And last year, and we're coming up to the anniversary date, it's 5 weeks away, is we set a world record for the most water usage of any city, of 650 litres for every single person in one day, which is insanity when it's the world's best drinking water. It's 650 litres for every person. It's incredible. And that's coming up, the anniversary. And if we do that this summer, that work can't be done.
Yeah, but and that's the message that needs to be got across, which is why I was kind of disappointed that the headline is restrictions instead of come on board and save the water, conserve the water, be part of the city that is in this together. Because, I mean, the work needs to be done. How much of it needs to be done over the summer? I think we'll follow that up after the Bruce Robertson report, but because I still have this view that we need to be thinking way more collaboratively with the medical officer of health about how we get to a position where we can actually make a decision to take the chlorine out of the water. And I mean, the Bruce Robertson report has made it pretty clear to me, and that's why we need the report next week to go through this, that that the level of risk is no different than it was last year. David?
What we could do is we could show on our public website the consumption we need to keep under, so people have got a clear picture. Are we succeeding as a community collectively? And then that would actually give you as councillors, but also the public out there, hey, we're getting up there, that might need to come in. So that might be a way to actually get a better buy-in, a bit like those, just a speedo, something or other.
Pauline and then Phil.
Yeah, thank you. Some of my stuff's actually been covered there, but and I thanks Helen for conducting the survey, which has come out a very positive response. I believe that people looks like they're willing to actually embrace this, and the people that you've spoken with obviously understood the rationale, which is encouraging for when we put the messages out. So we've actually got to move into taking people with us and perhaps getting some ideas from them as well on how to conserve the water. And I think we've got a website, haven't we, Waterwise or something? And I don't know if many people know about that or know how to get to it. But if we could have an interactive thing where people could feed in and give us their ideas on how they're conserving as well. I mean, for example, if I'm washing dishes in the sink, I use a pot or a bowl, and then you can pour that on your plants. I mean, that's the level we have to get to. It's like when we were looking at the flooding, we were talking every millimetre counts, every drop counts, every drop. So people realise they've got to do their bit. So if we can perhaps get the direction through the website with water saving tips, I think, and allow people to feed into that. Do you think that would be possible to build on that?
That may be possible. We'll have to check with our IT people about what sort of interactive website they can set up. But it certainly is possible. One of the things that may assist, and I'll circulate it to all councillors, is that we do have a water conservation campaign mapped out for the summer period, and I can circulate that to you so you can understand what the messaging is, how clear that messaging is, and that we will be focusing on the areas where we are doing work at the time we are doing the works.
Yes.
So we'll have a much more focused and intense campaign where we absolutely need it.
Right,
we need citywide savings, there's no doubt about that,
yeah.
but we also need a particular focus on some areas when we're doing some work.
Yeah, and we could put that on Facebook, etc. And the other thing too is how long do you envisage those restrictions would be in place till? Would it be, say, March, April?
March at the latest. It really depends on how hot and dry the summer is.
Yeah, so it's a short window of people just to really get on board now.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, Phil and then Glenn.
Thanks for your report, Helen. My question's about the water conservation things too, and just how perhaps we can be proactive and through our promotion programs, like including, for example, people purchasing drought-free plants, so in fact they cope better long-term, but also things like the use of mulch and things like that. So in fact we're proactive so that people have to use water less in the longer term. My other question, Helen, is in relation to the financial implications section of your report under 5.23 it is. So what we're doing is the cost of the physical works currently is going to be around 10 to 50,000 for each bore, but then the later physical works to raise the bores above ground level is between another 150 to $350,000. So I guess my question is, does that mean to achieve that safer water status, we're spending potentially an additional $50,000 so we can achieve that water status as soon as possible?
Yes, that's absolutely correct. So that 10 to 50,000 for the works to the below ground bores, most of that physical work will be replaced when we eventually raise those bores, and we would be proposing to raise those bores within 2 years.
Thank you.
Glenn, then Raph.
Thank you, Helen. Obviously, you know, we just have to get on and do the work, which is what we're doing, but I'm a little bit curious over a couple of the wellheads on page 9, which I drive past frequently, and I saw them, I've seen them worked on in the last few years. They took some time, and can I just ask you when we first began raising below ground wellheads, and I'm asking about the Lake Terrace and the Lake Terrace and the Hills wellheads. I'm particularly thinking of the one it's on the bend with Akaroa Street, heading.
So the work at Hills and Grampian has been underway for several weeks. So and those ones are both proposed to be finished in November.
Right, and that along with Lake Terrace, these are new kind of wells. I'm just trying to work out when we first.
No, these are not new wells. These are existing wells where we're putting an oversized casing down, putting a grout seal in, then raising the bore up above ground and replacing the headworks.
I'm just curious as to when did we start raising wellheads, because these are quite new.
I take your point. Okay, so since the earthquakes, all of the new ones since the earthquakes have been above ground.
This was already on the council agenda before we were elected. Well, before I was elected. So it was pre-2013 that the decision was taken to put the wellheads over time above ground. What we're doing is fast tracking a program that was already underway.
I don't think these were done, because these were both done post-quake.
Yeah, no,
and now we're going back.
Hills Road, Street's above ground.
But there's fencing around it right now, and there's a new one going to be done at Lake Terrace. And yet Lake Terrace is quite new.
I think Dean's question we're trying to ask, why are these above ground wellheads being worked on? Is that right?
Well, they're not
Because
above ground.
the Hills Road one is.
Well,
They're
why has it
above
got
ground.
fencing around it?
I think,
So-
aren't you saying
Yeah,
that
look,
we
you-
put
so-
in below ground wells post earthquake?
Yeah.
I don't think we did.
No, I don't think we did. I think we did repair some, but I don't think any new wells went in with above ground wellheads. But I can check that.
But
I
look,
check
we
that
can
for-
check the details.
Yeah, that'd
but,
be good. It's the, yeah, okay, yep.
The decision was taken quite a long time ago to put the wellheads above ground, but over a very long period of time. Ref?
I mean, that's an interesting question. And what I was going to ask, really, going back to the data piece, I mean, we've talked about open data for quite a few years here, and I think having the ability to give the public a measure of daily water consumption would help. Unfortunately, the only thing that will get people to reduce consumption is pricing water, because there's actually no incentive for anyone to limit the amount of water they use. So people who don't use a lot of water get no benefit from that, and people who use a lot of water are really not paying for that. So unless we get to the point where there are water shortages, which does get people to change. I mean, look at Cape Town, nearly ran out of water a couple of years ago. You know, people immediately cut their consumption, but we're not running out of water. So the incentives to get people to change are quite tricky, but having numbers can be quite good, because that does give people something to focus on. and
Totally
something to
agree.
work with. So if we could get that data, I mean, do we have daily data on water consumption?
We do off all our main pump stations. We have to work out how to bring it in. It's a little bit more tricky because there's some zones that will be more, we'll want to reduce and maintain a low flow where we're doing the work, obviously. So we have that data, we bring it in, we get daily consumption, we send that off to ECAN, we get that all, that's done. At the moment it's done wellhead or pump station by pump station, so we'd have to somehow bring it together and just have to talk to our IT people how I get it out of SCADA and put it into whatever I need to do or they need to do to put it into a speedometer or into a something or other.
I think it would be incredibly useful, and to have it front facing on our website every day so that people can see what the daily consumption is, you know, and something to measure against. Is this up or down? At the moment, we know from this report, and you know this was news, was that our consumption rate is higher than it was this time last year. We can't go into summer like that. We have to bring down our consumption rate, and what I want to do is call on the people of Christchurch to get in behind the campaign. It's only so that staff can carry on bringing the wellheads above ground. It's so that they can continue the same rate of work that they've been working on the wellheads up until now, right through the summer period. We need people to come on board with a campaign to conserve. We don't want to impose restrictions. It's about people actually having a chance to do something. And you know, and look, somebody mentioned the bottling plants, and there are 2 letters to the editor. That's got nothing to do with our supply of water. We do not supply the water. We do not take the water out of the ground for them. They treat the water before they put it into the bottles. It is consented by ECAN. It has nothing to do with the Christchurch City Council, and it has nothing to do with the supply of water. But I mean, is it possible to even have that conversation so that people understand they're 2 separate things?
Yes, so the messaging in the water conservation campaign is about the need to take wells and pump stations offline to continue works.
Yeah.
It's not about a lack of water as such. It's about a need to continue repairs to our infrastructure that we use to deliver the water.
Right.
And making that clear to people. And once you explain that, people do get it. They do understand.
Yeah. But I get frustrated because there doesn't seem to be a counter message. You know, it's very easy to say, you know, all these people are taking water. They've got their own bores, they've got their own consents, and it's all done through ECAN. I mean, none of us around this table are particularly happy about circumstances that pre-existed in terms of existing consents that are just picked up by people who come in and buy, and then you know, work against what is a sort of a global need to deal with plastics. I mean, for goodness sake. But it's got nothing to do with our water conservation program.
So just to finish what I was saying, You can't manage what you don't measure. And you
Yes.
can't expect people to change their behaviours when they don't have the most basic information.
Yeah.
So if you're not giving them a price signal, you've got to give them a quantity signal.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's a really strong point, and I think you're receiving that message loud and clear, Helen. We would like to see that as part of the campaign. On the front page of the Christchurch City Council website, daily consumption rates with a comparison to where we were last year and where we need to be able to take our wellheads offline to fix them. Dion?
Are we still in questions?
Yeah?
Okay, cool. Sorry, I thought...
Well, that was one.
That's my first one. Second question, is there any... do you know any of the... why we're tracking about 20 to 25% more consumption of water this year, especially since 1st of July to now, over the last 2 years?
No, we don't, and we're checking back to see why that is. One of the reasons might be that we've changed which pump stations we're using, and there may be some flow meter data that isn't quite the same. It may be that we're counting another pump station that we weren't counting last year. Okay. So we are doing a bit of work on that.
Because it's quite an anomaly there, so I just wanted to sort of get that clear.
Just one thing I'd answer, and this time last year we were coming out of 2 major floods, and this year we're coming out of actually 3 dry months. And so Helen raised, our biggest challenge will be what the climate will do over the time, and I think you'll see there's a difference in the last 3 months. We have certainly had 3 months that are drier than the average that we normally have for these 3 months. Last year we had 3 months which was off the record books of extraordinarily wet, and that might not be the main reason, but I think that may be the main reason.
I mean, I don't know if that's necessarily the case, because June, remember, was one of the wettest Junes we've ever had, and the water table's been higher than it's ever been before. So I mean, I'm not sure whether that's actually true. Or with a whole case of the thing, maybe. But anyway, the other question I have is, we've got the big commercial users. I remember reading a report sometime, ANZCO use a lot of water, the other, big commercial users. Are we also talking to them? Because, I mean, we're putting a lot of onus on our residents. Are we talking to these big commercial users and saying, actually...
If they've got their own bores, Dion, they're not taking it out of our system?
No, they're taking it out of the take. There was a report here...
But that's repeating.
No, it's the infrastructure. They take a lot of water.
That is repeating the issue that I've just raised.
So if there are big commercial users that are on the city supply, yes, they are getting the price signals that Councillor Manji mentioned there. So they are focused on conservation of water.
Yes, I know, but I mean, we've got some big users that take off the water, the city water supply. Yes. I'm just sort of saying, are they getting the same message about reducing their supply, or are they going to be measured at different times? When we've got peak times that residents might be using it. They
already have that message through the pricing signal. So that's not where we see the fluctuations in the summer. The fluctuations in the summer are due to residential use and garden watering. It's not about industrial and commercial users.
I was just thinking about evening out the flow that's going through the system.
But they pay for their water, which we pay for the system through our rates, but they get a specific price signal around how much they use. All right. Tim and
Thank
Vicky.
you. Just a couple of quick questions. First of all, just to clarify, the water restrictions that we are proposing, or that are going to be put in, are not about restricting water because of the reduced amount of water. It is restricting the use to allow work on our pump stations to get the pump stations above the ground to get to the reduction or the elimination of chlorine in our water sooner. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, but I need to emphasise that the water conservation campaign comes first. So the water conservation messages will go out first. We will use focused messages in areas where the demand exceeds what we can supply and continue to do the work, and water restrictions will be a last resort. So the survey indicates that people are willing to conserve water, and so we think that in fact will be so across the city.
But the crux of it is to allow us to do work on the above head wellheads to get rid of, eliminate the chlorine sooner than normal, because there's been a lot of discussion around about and concern about restriction of water, etc., because of the lack perhaps of water. But that's not the case.
If we stopped the wellhead conversion and the remediation works, we could supply what the city is demanding over the summer.
Okay, because at some point, the process that we use for this would actually be good, because at some point in the future, there may well be water issues because of lack of water, and that measure, and that how we show people, and it should be on the face of that should be the first thing on the City Council website, because it is the most important thing to the city, is that if you are using this much, then we are going to have problems. If you reduce it, because I think what Aaron said, 650 litres per day, that's insane, like, I'm sure I don't use that much, but I guess the question is, we're taking an assumption that the people of Christchurch want to restrict, would openly restrict water to get rid of chlorine quicker, because we actually haven't gone out and asked anybody.
Yes, we have asked them,
Yeah,
and the survey results are in the
sorry.
report,
Okay.
and people are willing to come on board with that.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Vicky.
So just a couple of things.
The water bottling plant, which people will confuse with this,
Yes.
that's coming to ITI next meeting in terms of what we can do by way of responding to the resource consent that's gone into ECAN for that, as I understand it. And then secondly, if people have water tanks, rainwater tanks, I'm assuming then they're free to use that up before they start, because it's not impacting on our water.
Absolutely
at all.
correct. If people
Right.
have got rainwater tanks,
Then
there's no
this is an
restriction on that
advantage
use.
for them. And then thirdly, on the big picture, so at the end of 12 months in April next year,
May the 9th was
May the
when we
9th,
finished
right?
the
I knew
temporary
you'd have that
chlorination program.
date etched in your memory. So May the 9th, assuming that the drinking water person will approve the repairs to the, I think you said 46 tanks?
46 below ground
below
wellheads,
ground.
yes.
Does that get us to the point that we want to be at on May the 9th next year?
Yes, it should. If all of the other works go to plan and we can do the repairs on those below ground wells, we should be able to provide water to the whole city without chlorine. The slight rider I would put on that before you get too joyful about it is that is during the winter. So that is winter supply, and we don't need to have every pump station running. The challenge would then be the following summer, and that's why we're also still pursuing ultraviolet at a number of other pump stations.
Thanks, Helen. Yeah. Any other questions? Very good. Raf, you had an amendment that you wanted to add to this, and that's been moved and seconded. Do you just want to?
Sorry, it hasn't been moved or seconded yet.
Oh, yeah. But
I'm happy to move it.
yeah, but I'm just wondering whether you just want to include it in the entire resolution.
Yeah, I'm happy to move.
You're happy to move the whole
Yeah.
thing, and you're happy to second the whole thing, Aaron?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So, is there any discussion about that?
Well, if I may.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, the reason I've included it is because I do think we need to understand what those implications are before we make a decision, because we did approve this chlorination program for 12 months. It was approved reluctantly and somewhat under duress at the time. And rather than saying we're going to stop or not stop, I'd like to know what the implications are in terms of whether we believe the public health issue is not an issue, which has clearly been the point, what the reaction would be from the drinking water assessor, what the reaction would be from
Medical Officer of Health.
Medical Officer of Health. So I just want to understand those implications before we start thinking about that decision, because I think it is a decision council will have to approve to extend at some point.
Yeah. Pauline.
Yeah, can I say something about that? Because surely we've not made a decision to remove the chlorine unless the drinking water assessor had indicated that she, in this case, is satisfied that our infrastructure is of the standard.
That's what this is about, because that
Yeah.
is not the case.
Sorry?
That is not the case.
What do you mean?
Well,
We
you're making
have
an
only
assumption. So the reason
authorised-
I'm asking for the implications is because I want to understand the implications without making assumptions as to either what decision we would make or what position different people would have. on
Yeah.
it.
I'm good with this. Look, we're going to have a bigger debate about this
Yes.
next week
Yeah.
when Carleen Edwards reports on the Bruce Robertson report, because that identifies a sequence of events that we haven't debated as a council yet, and I want us to debate that, and I want us to understand what the implications are of that. So I'm quite happy for this one, because I think that will be reinforcing this, but asking a few other questions as a result of the Bruce Robertson report when we debate that next week. So I'm really comfortable for this, and I think that a number of us are going to be having conversations with certainly the medical officer of health about that report and how that might feed into the decisions that we need to make. So the council staff have no authority to add chlorine in the water beyond the 12 months from when it was instigated, and that's the 9th of May. That is the date that everyone has etched in their mind, and that does take us into a winter period, which is a good thing, because it does mean that it gives us a lot more time to continue to work on it. But the other good thing is that the other thing is that I'm still not necessarily convinced that without having certain conversations, I'm not convinced that we have to keep the chlorine in even that long. So, but I want to go through all of the issues and understand what all of the issues are, which is why I support the addition of that recommendation. Andrew.
Thank you. The answer to Vicky's question was particularly encouraging, that we are on track to get the chlorine out of the water within the 1 year period. I'm certainly supportive of this additional wording. I think we need to be in the best position we can be as we approach consideration of how we are able to get the chlorine out of the water, and we do that confidently. It's right that we should have the best advice and the best information around any decision that we may need to make, or the timing of that. But the headline message really for me is that I'm delighted that we've got an improvement programme underway which is achieving what we've set out to achieve, which is to get the chlorine out of the water within that 12-month period. So yeah, well done, Helen, to you and the team for all the work that you're doing. We certainly appreciate the complicated nature of the work and the demands that you're under, and I think you're doing a great job with the team. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Well, I'll just wrap up the debate again, saying the same thing, just calling on the people of Christchurch to come on board. This is not a case of imposing restrictions. This is an opportunity for Christchurch residents to basically help the team get the bore heads repaired in sufficient time, or brought above ground in sufficient time, that we can continue to reduce the chlorine in the water, but at the same time aim to get it out of the water altogether at a point that we want to keep it there. And that was my point about the Bruce Robertson report, and I won't rehearse the arguments that the points that I want to make next week, except to say this, that what the Bruce Robertson report was designed to help us understand was not only how to get the chlorine out of the water, but how to keep it that way, because we've got central government to also work with in terms of some of the agendas that are being promoted in that sphere, and that's all I'll say about that today. But thank you, Helen, as Andrew has said, to you and all of the team. It's an extraordinary job that you're doing under a considerable amount of pressure, and we really appreciate it, and so do the people of Christchurch. Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried, and we will adjourn for a cup of coffee and come back here at, that'll be nice, 11:30.